Hello and welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. It's Friday and that means we return with the Kitchen Table series, MTG Burgeoning's longest running series here at the channel. And today we are up to deck tech number 37, Boros Humans. What's up, fans of MTG Burgeoning? What's up, fans of the Kitchen Table series? We are back with another deck number 37 of the series, and today we are going to break down a Boros Humans deck. And in so doing, and as usually is customary here during the Kitchen Table series, we are going to begin with the land base. And if we're playing Boros, that means we are playing red and we are playing white. So let's get right to our basic lands. We got some mountains here. We've got 8 basic mountains to start things off, and trailing slightly behind those mountains are going to be 8 basic plains. 8 plains and 8 mountains for 16 basic lands. Additionally, to round out our total of 20 lands in this deck is going to be 2 copies of Clifftop Retreats. It is our Boros check land. It comes into play untapped as long as we control a mountain or a plains. And lastly, the other 2 lands we're going to include are going to be identical, 2 copies of Hanweir Battlements. It is a rare land from Eldritch Moon. We can tap for 1 colorless mana. We can tap a red and tap this to give target creature haste until end of turn. And we can tap 3 and 2 red, and if we both own and control Hanweir Battlements and a creature named Hanweir Garrison, spoiler, we exile them and then meld them into Hanweir the Writhing Township, which we will see later in this deck tech. So we're going to put one of those lands right there to the side so that we can show off exactly how those 2 cards are going to meld together. All right, so that is the land base. Now let's take a look at some of our removal. 1 copy of Path to Exile. And we exile target creature. Its controller searches their library for a basic land and puts that card onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffles their library. Only 1 copy because I don't like giving lands to my opponents, particularly in an aggro deck like this, where I'm more interested in just bringing down life totals and not giving my opponents too much time to tick up to a board wipe or too much time to, accumulate their lands to cast any spells that might hurt me, which in some ways brings into question, why are we playing with an entire playset of Swords to Plowshares? And that's, exile target creature, its controller gains life equal to that creature's power. Again, I'd rather get rid of a small creature that might be trying to block one of our guys and let them gain a few extra points of life as opposed to gifting them with a free basic land. So 4 copies of Swords to Plowshare is in to accompany the 1 copy of Path to Exile. All right, next up, this is not necessarily removal because it's going to target just our creatures and it's going to help in combat, or it's going to help bolster some of the interactions that we have with our humans, which we'll see in a little while. It's going to be an entire playset of Cloud Shift. It's a common from Avacyn Restored, and it's only 1 white as an instant, and we exile target creature we control, and then return that card to the battlefield under our control. And once we start rolling out the different human creature spells we have included in this deck, including an entire play set of Cloud Shift will make sense. At the basest, most minimal way, we can have Cloud Shift as a defensive capability. We will declare a blocker, and if our creature is going to die, after the declare blocker step, but before damage is dealt, we cast Cloud Shift on our creature, get our creature out of harm's way, and our creature survives. So 4 copies of Cloud Shift. Speaking of protection and versatility, which we haven't really talked about a lot so far, Cloud Shift offers that, and so does Spare from Evil, a common from Dark Ascension. It's an instant for for 1 and a white, and says creatures you control gain protection from non-human creatures until end of turn. There are a lot more non-human creature decks than human decks out there. Non-human creature decks than human creature decks are out there. So 4 copies to give our team of humans protection from non-humans to get through with the last few points of lethal combat damage. All right. Additionally, to help whittle down our opponent's life total, we are going to include 3 copies of an enchantment called Impact Tremors. Now, this is going all the way back to the time of Dragons of Tarkir. Impact Tremors is an enchantment for 1 and a red, and whenever a creature whenever a creature enters the battlefield under our control, each opponent gets 1 damage from Impact Tremors. So a creature comes in, each opponent's taking 1. Creature comes in, each opponent's taking 1. 3 copies of Impact Tremors. Keeping in mind the number of times I said each opponent coming into play, each creature coming into play deals, let's try this again. When I was saying creature comes into play, deals 1.2 to each opponent. Creature comes into play for us, deals 1 damage to each opponent. Thatcher Revolt is going to pair up very, very well with Impact Tremors. Sorcery from Avacyn Restored, it's 2 and a red, and we create 3 1/1 red human creature tokens with haste, and we have to sacrifice those at the beginning of the next end step. So as a way in which to curve in perfectly, turn 2 Impact Tremors, turn 3 Thatcher Revolt, the 3 humans come into play, triggers Impact Tremors 3 times, deals 3 points of damage to each opponent at the kitchen table, and then we have 3 hasty humans to attack any of our opponents that do not have any blockers. 4 copies of Thatcher Revolt. All right, so those are our non-creature spells. So now let's get into it with our creature spells. And we're going to start with 1 full playset of a golden goodie from Dark Ascension named Champion of the Parish. For 1 white, it's a 1/1 human soldier, and whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Champion of the Parish. You can do little wrong with a series of turns that begins with turn 1, Champion of Parish, turn 2, Impact Tremors, turn 3, Thatcher Revolt. That gets you off to a very quick start. 4 copies of Champion of the Parish. Next up, we're going to uptick the CMC from 1 to 2 and show a full play set of Talias Lieutenants. This rare from Shadows over Innistrad is 1 and a white for a 1/1 human soldier, and when Talias Lieutenant enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each other human you control. Whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Talias Lieutenants. Again, this is another great creature to cast right before casting our sorcery of Thatcher Revolt. 3 copies of Talias Lieutenant. All right, we are winding down with our deck list here. Deck number 37 of the Kitchen Table series. We have next another play set from an Avacyn Restored creature. Actually, not another play set from an Avacyn Restored. This is the first play set of an Avacyn Restored creature, and it's most likely going to be not our last. Ha ha ha. We are going to include 4 copies of Kessig Malcontents. For 2 and a red, it's a 3/1 human warrior, and when Kessig Malcontents enters the battlefield, it deals damage to target player equal to the number of humans we control. 4 copies, Kessig Malcontents. All right, next up, staying on curve with our CMC. This one is going to stay right at the curve of Kessig Malcontents. It is the earlier aforementioned and foreshadowed Hanweir Garrison. 2 and a red, it's a 2/3 human soldier, and when Hanweir Garrison attacks, we create 2 1/1 human creature tokens, put them onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. 4 copies of Hanweir Garrison, one of which we are going to set aside in order to show how it melds with the Hanweir battlements. But before doing so, let's complete the deck tech by including the last 4 spells of this Boros Humans deck. And we're going one more time to Avacyn Restored for this goodie. 4 copies, 1 playset of Zealous Conscripts. For 4 red, it's a 3/3 human warrior with haste, and when Zealous Conscripts enters the battlefield, gain control of target permanent until end of turn. Untap that permanent, it gains haste until end of turn. Make no mistake about it, the majority of times this is going to come down and take the biggest creature that's on the battlefield under one of our opponent's control, and we get to turn that sideways to help send the last points of lethal combat damage to our opponents to try to clinch the game, particularly after we whittle down their life total with impact, tremors, and some of our other humans that are in play. 4 copies of Zealous Conscripts. That is the Boros Humans deck tech. Deck tech number 37 of the Kitchen Table series. As promised, now let's take a look at what happens when we exile and meld together Hanweir battlements and the Hanweir garrison. This is what we end up getting when we're able to do that. We get Hanweir, the Writhing Township, which is a 7/4 Eldrazi ooze with trample and haste. Whenever Hanweir, the Writhing Township, attacks, put 2 3/2 colorless Eldrazi horror creature tokens onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. No, they are not humans, although maybe they were at one point if they're just Eldrazi horrors now. We don't know, and frankly, we don't need to know, because if we're fortunate enough to meld these 2 together, we are sending 13 haste power into combat, one of which is a 7/4 trampler. And that's going to be aces in our book, folks. That is Hanweir, the Writhing Township. And this is Boros Humans Kitchen Table Series deck number 37. Folks, this is MTG Burgeoning. This is your channel for all things magic.